Hi, it's time for another verb of the day. Today's verb is consume. Consume was suggested by the viewer Luis, so a special thank you to Luis for this great idea. Now let's review some of the definitions or the ways that we use this verb. The first way you might see or hear the verb consume used just means to eat food or drink a liquid. A second way to use the verb consume can mean to buy goods or services. Related to that is the third definition, to use up a particular resource. With that third definition, many times we use it to talk about natural resources. So if a forest of trees is cut down, right, so that the wood can be used to make various things, we might say the forest was consumed, it was used up. A fourth way the verb consume gets used is unfortunately many times connected to fires, and generally means that something has been completely destroyed by the fire. You might hear something like, a fire consumed their house, right? This has an extremely negative meaning, right? It means the house was destroyed by fire. A fifth way to use the verb consume relates to our emotions, right? Our feelings. So if you have a particular emotion that is absorbing all of your attention or maybe all of your energy, you will hear this verb used to describe that. I'll note that many times when this gets used, it's being used to describe more negative or uncomfortable emotions. So it might be something like grief, really strong sadness. Might be something like anger as well. For now, you should know that consume is a regular verb. To make the progressive form of this verb, we're going to drop the E on the end because we have a verb that ends with a vowel, a consonant, and then an E. We drop the E, we add ing, and that forms consuming. The past tense and participle forms of this verb can be made just by adding D, since this verb already ends in an E. Now our base verb, consume, ends in a voice sound. The M sound there is a voiced one. This means when I add ed, I'm just going to make a D sound, and I'm not adding an extra syllable as I say it. So the past tense and participle forms of this verb should sound like this. Consumed, consumed. Okay. Now, there aren't any phrasal verbs that we need to discuss with this verb, so we'll move on and do a little verb tense practice. Today, we're going to review the imperative and the present perfect progressive. Let's start with the imperative. The imperative is rather unique in English. We don't have stated subjects with the imperative. And that's because the imperative is really a command. We're telling someone else to do, if it's an affirmative action, do an action, or not do a particular action. So in the affirmative, we can begin a sentence with just the base verb, right? So that's because our subject is implied. It's either you singular if I'm talking to one person or I'm writing to a single person, or it's you plural. Okay? So let's take a look at an example sentence here. It says, consume a glass of water every 2 hours while taking this medication. This might be a piece of information we're being given by a pharmacist, right? Someone who prescribes medication. For whatever reason, maybe someone is, some type of medication can make you feel dehydrated, right? Like you don't have all that you need, so it's very important to be drinking water, right? So the pharmacist or maybe another medical professional is telling you to do this action, right? They're telling you to drink water. Now, to make a negative imperative sentence, we can start with do not and then the base verb, or we can say don't and then the base verb. An example of this, don't be consumed by sadness. Okay, so again, maybe someone is trying to be helpful. They have a friend, a family member who, for whatever reason, is extremely sad, and that sadness is maybe affecting every minute of their day. Right? Now, I will warn you, giving the command to someone how to feel or how to deal can be a little tricky. So I saw examples like this from various people. That can seem a little harsh. So if we want to soften our commands, make them seem maybe a little more polite, we could add the word please to the beginning of the sentence, or we could add please to the end. We only need one please, though. But many times, if we really see someone who is overwhelmed or sort of filled with this strong negative or uncomfortable emotion, there might be other ways to deal with that. But now let's move on and talk about making sentences in the present perfect progressive. Many teachers and textbooks and perhaps other YouTube videos you may watch will call this the present perfect continuous. That is perfectly fine. These two things mean exactly the same thing. The verb tense is really focused on us recognizing that there's a particular action that started in the past and it's continuing into the present. It may even continue into the future. The reason I like saying present perfect progressive is I like to point out to my students, notice there are 3 P's, and I want them to remember that I'm going to need 3 parts or 3 words to make my verb. Okay? So this is a verb tense where we need to pay attention to our subject. If our subject is I, you, we, or they, use have, been, and then the ing form the verb. Okay, so there are 3 parts, have, been, and a verb with ing. But if our subject is he, she, or it, you're going to use has, been, and then the ing form of the verb. Let's take a look at an example sentence. She has only been consuming from local businesses during this last year. Okay, so what this sentence suggests to me is that this person has only been buying goods or things, or maybe buying services from local businesses, not from your national or international companies. Now let's look at making a negative sentence in the present perfect progressive. To do this, start with your subject, right? And then if our subject is I, you, we, or they, use have not, or the contraction haven't, the participle been, and then the ing form the verb. If your subject is he, she, or it, use has not, or hasn't been, and then the ing form the verb. Let's look at another example. We haven't been consuming much natural gas during the last few months. Okay? So that would be using a resource, right? That sentence should tie back to that definition. Finally, let's look at making a yes or no question in the present perfect progressive. To do this, start with have or has, whichever form matches your subject. That subject comes next. Then our participle been, and then the ing form the verb. Here's my last example. Have fires been consuming millions of acres of land? So acre is a measurement that's used in the United States. So you might think of kind of these large quantities. So millions of acres of land. And unfortunately, this is something that has been happening in certain U.S. states, right? Fires have been burning whatever is in their way, buildings, trees, other plant life as well. So it's been destroyed by fire. Now let's spend a moment looking at some words that are related to our verb consume. The first word we're going to discuss today is the noun consumer. This can have a couple different meanings. One refers to a person, or if it's plural, people who purchase goods and services for their personal use. An example of this: what are consumers looking for in new cars? Right? So maybe a company is kind of sitting and thinking about what sort of features, what kind of things should we have as we design new automobiles, right? So they want to know the people who are going to buy these things, what do they want? A second way to use the noun consumer can refer to a person or thing that eats or uses something. An example of this: consumers of dairy products should not be impacted by this development. Okay? I heard something very similar to this week, as there was news that bird flu has been found in some cattle or some cows here in the United States. And there was automatically kind of a question of like, okay, what further impacts will there be? So the people that eat dairy products, right? They were saying, you're not going to be impacted. Okay. Another related word you might encounter is the adjective consumable. This means able or meant to be consumed by eating, drinking, or using something. An example of this might be, they prefer to give consumable gifts as opposed to knickknacks. Word knickknacks might be new for some people. You might think of little things that you might display on bookcases, other shelves, or other parts of your home. Might be small things that have been made, maybe little funny signs, things like that. Okay. Here, this sentence is saying, you know what? Instead of giving a thing to someone, right, I'm going to give them something they can enjoy, something they can eat or drink. Now, the word consumable can also be a noun that's generally referring to something that is able to be consumed or able to be eaten or used. I should note this noun is most commonly used in the plural form, and you can see that in my example here. The store primarily carries consumables, not durable goods. So consumables, things you're going to use up. Durable is going to be that last for a very long time. Okay. Thank you. One more. Sorry, I forgot. One more word. That's the noun consumerism. This is the promotion of interests of consumers. So that this definition really goes back to that idea of buying goods, buying services, using up resources. Many people have said things like our last example sentence here: consumerism is damaging our environment. Right? The way in many countries, many parts of the world, where we buy, right? And use up resources can have a really strong negative impact on our environment. I hope this video has helped us understand the verb consume a little bit better. Thanks again to Louise for this suggestion. Thank you all for watching. I hope you have a great day.